people come down with the debugger because I think the debugger is one of these things that a lot of people have forgotten about, and in many cases it is a really powerful tool.
Oh, much more. I had a coffee conversation earlier, and it's even more powerful than most people think, and I'll explain why. Sorry.
And you fixed it last year for me, and it works.
Okay, it's powerful, but 99, I'll use the ivory soap constant, 99.44% of the people out there, if not more, have never actually really read the manual, even partially. I would bet you if you did a survey, less than that, have actually read more than 2 pages of the manual. When they're hard copy manuals still, we didn't have online access. I used to walk into sites, and while I was talking to somebody, I would just lean against the bookshelf and run my hands over the inside of the doc set.
Which ones are covered in dust?
No, which ones have their cellophane still intact?
Well, okay.
If the cellophane ain't broken, they didn't even bother to open them.
No one reads
People don't read.
documentation.
But here's the thing. I used ODT on the PDP-11. Examine, deposit, and breakpoint. This is one more thing that he knew from the octal console with the switches. You couldn't do breakpoint from the switches. Well, you could deposit a 0 and wait for the halt. Okay. Most people use debugger as a symbolic version of ODT. They don't do anything beyond that. And by the way, my apologies, John, for picking on you.
That's okay. That's what I'm here for.
The man who runs compiler development is sitting here. He gets the bug reports. Am I right? You're shaking your head.
No, they'll come. Anything compilers, build development tools, all start with me, and I push them all to other people.
Okay. The name of the game of the debugger is work smarter, not harder. Let the debugger do the work. This is the same reason we switched from machine code to assembler, to higher level languages, and so forth. Let the machine be your clerk. They're really good at that. Not so good at other things, but really good at being clerks. Think of it as process. It's not the way people debug is they just jump into the pool. Actually, it's not a pool. It's more like a lake. They've never surveyed the bottom. They don't know if there's a bloody tree trunk right below the surface or a rock. And frequently when they just jump in, they break something, they hit something and break something. Well, they run into something they didn't expect. For example, an alligator. Oops, I didn't notice there was an alligator in there. Oh, well. Or if you're in South America, there is that thing about piranhas. You cross at the wrong place and do the wrong thing, well, it gives new meaning to skeleton crew. First, please read the manual. Okay, it has lots of defects, but it's 810 pages long. And it's full of interesting tidbits. Good example, when you're watching that movie on the weekend or the night, take the hard copy, leave it. Okay, you can read it off your tablet, you can read it off your laptop, you can take the hard copy. When that 10-minute commercial break happens, start reading. If you do it for a couple of nights, you'll get through the 800 pages. And you won't have missed anything in your movie.
You sleep better because it puts the sleep.
The IRS, when I was growing up, my father was an attorney practicing tax work. The IRS code was a perfect cure for insomnia.
Mm-hmm.
You read those sentences, you'll be out like a light.
Yeah.
And no quite opposite examples. People use a book as the best sleep pill.
Yeah.
Now,
As soon as book is here, it's there.
now you gotta read. Like I said, I'm running ahead of myself, front running myself a little bit. People are using it like ODT with simples. Much, much more is possible, and it reduces your workload. Example, a lot of people debug with print. sticking print statements everywhere. Okay, I did that when I was in junior high school. It works. Slow, but it does work. You put prints everywhere and you find which was the last one executed, and that was the next line is where this array check happened. Then you print the index out on another run, but you're waiting an hour between each run, so it really burns time. ODT was better. Interesting point. There was a study done at the Air Force Academy 45, 50 years ago. The most computer time was used by the people debugging interactively. They got nowhere. They had an if statement. There were 8 or 9 possible conditions. They tried all 8 before they found what worked. There was no analysis going on. They were just iterating down the possibilities to see what didn't bug check. The people with 2-hour turnaround on batch got nothing done because they were waiting 2 hours between iterations. The most productive people were the people with 15 to 30-minute guaranteed turnaround on batch. And the way they implemented this was they put timestamps on the submissions. Everybody went into the 15-minute queue, but the people in the 1 hour segment, or I think it was 1 hour, an hour and a half, whatever the number was, doesn't matter. They literally wouldn't hand the output back until the time had run down. So it wasn't random. They actually had 3 populations very vigorously isolated. There were 2 problems with the study. One, students are the subjects. They're cheap. That bias is the problem. Second, student problems are always small. So there's no context. Most real software is complicated. But the problem still holds because you're really in the middle group. If you're debugging it step by step, you're not thinking in general. If you have a project which takes 5 hours to set up a scenario and then reset it, which doesn't happen as much now with virtualization. The hell was that? Luckily, we're not in California. Then you'd worry. It doesn't generally take you hours to set up a scenario and restart it with a VM.
If you know how to.
Yeah, what you do is you clone the VM, run the clone, break the clone, throw away the clone, refresh, do again. Works wonders. However, people aren't thinking process. Debug gives you symbols, which is a huge help. I mean, trying to remember octal addresses and looking at link map and computing offsets, pain. God, HP had a great calculator in the old days. It worked in hex. It's symbolic. It's more powerful than ODT. But you can leverage more. For example, some simple advanced features that are listed in Chapter 13 of the current manual. You have initialization files. Saves you a lot of typing. Now, most initialization files I run into, when I run into them, which is rarely, have less than 10 lines. Set break for exceptions, set this, set that, go. Wrong. Not really productive in a large-scale case. It's a onesie. Custom, it's not anywhere near the protocol you get when you bring your car in for service or you walk into an emergency room. How do they trace bugs in an emergency? How do they trace problems when you go into an emergency room? They have a 10 or 20 point checklist that they run. Absolutely. You want to end up in the same case. You have session logging. I have more scratch notes without doing this than I can count on my desk. I'm always looking for odd pieces of scrap paper to write things down on. Use the session log. How do you put in scratch notes into a session log? Exclamation point is a comment character. Exclamation point. Type away. This gives you a record to work from later when you get yourself completely discombobulated. You're down 47 levels. You don't remember what you did 5 minutes ago. The coffee is running down. You're having a caffeine crash. which I've eliminated by using decaf, and you have no idea what you did and how you got here. The log is your friend. You can go back, you can stop, go back, and look at what you did. Conditional breakpoints. Set breakpoint doesn't just stop at a command prompt. Set breakpoint allows you to do something at the breakpoint. You can look for iteration 47. You can look for x is less than y plus 50, or any condition you could dream up your condition. It can be long. There are continuation lines. You can run a program for 5 hours and breakpoint on a certain point, looking for a certain condition to happen. And if the condition is not present, just continue. If it breaks, you can examine things. You don't have to type it. When this happens, please examine these 5 things. Now, if it's a record or an array, it'll dump the whole record or the array. You can go further, but I'll talk to that in a minute. There's more to break than you talk about. Debugging scripts can be invoked. You have the @ sign that we all know and love to a ridiculous level. You can say in debug init, and by the way, I'm in the program X, run the X debug script, and the X debug script can say, this X contains Y, Z, A, B, C, D. Include all of them. They may include other things. And it's like you're effectively a military unit establishing a base camp and putting tripwires and anti-personnel mines all around the perimeter. If somebody comes a-calling, your bug comes a-calling, it's going to trip the landmine. It's a lot easier when everything is wired like a pinball machine. Then you can just say, run. Boom. Okay, we know what failed. Now, let's go a step further. Anybody here use Ruby? Ruby has an interesting feature. It has a default action for printing every object type. Or you can override the object for a particular type. If you know more about the semantics and want to do something SDA-ish about it, okay. Your program and its dependent subroutines all know about that. We'll get to that in a minute. Next, I always tend to front run myself. You can invoke subroutines from debug directly. So you have 500 or 1,000 subroutines in your image. You can invoke each one of them with parameters from the current code, from the current memory state, directly from the debug command line. Now, that's
so you don't, excuse me, so you don't supply your own arguments. It uses the current state.
You can use the current state. You can set constants as arguments. You can do anything you bloody want.
As if you would have had that call in the source code at that point. You passed in your own parameters. Like, oh, I forgot to add a print to the program. I have an internal routine that does printing. I call my dumping routine with.
Wait, I'm getting you.
And you can do that. So
you see where I'm going, John.
You don't have to rebuild your program with prints.
This is all about leverage. I'm a very big believer in leverage. You use you're like a yacht, like a sailing yacht skipper. You use every breath of wind, every ounce of weight, every single thing you can use to maximize performance. If you have to, you tear the thing, if you have the time and the resources, you lift the boat out of the water every night and polish the hull. If you don't need the full centerboard deployed, You pull it up 50% or 70% or whatever you need to reduce drag. If you need to, there are people who've thrown people into the water to reduce weight on a downwind run. You've got a life jacket. Off. I save 150 pounds. People get really crazy about that. There's a story about an evacuation, one of the last evacuation flights out of the Philippines during World War II. It was in an ancient amphibian. They threw the luggage overboard. They threw the floorboards overboard. They stripped everything and threw it overboard to make land. There was a British Corvette or a Canadian Corvette during the war in the Atlantic. The weather was too rough to refuel. They burned everything aboard to make port. The furniture, clothing, paper. If it burned, it burned. And they made it. Because the idea was you threw a hose over to one of the tankers in the convoy and you pulled in a fuel. But you need fairly calm water to do that. It was a bad week. They got to the point where they just had enough fuel to go home and they said, we can't refuel. The weather looks crap. Sorry, guys, we have to run. And they barely made it to port. Okay, leverage is everything. Sample program, I admit this is a silly program. It's only to demonstrate. You link it using debug and no optimize. Please, when you're using the debugger, if you can at all avoid it, don't turn on optimize. A good optimizer working at high level will give you a splitting headache. I have seen optimizers take a huge program and shrink it down to nothing because somebody left off an output statement and it just had Z equals 57, but Z never printed, so Z was not needed. That meant X, Y, and A were not needed. All the way up to a return statement. It was a bug. It was a bug in a feature in the IBM Fortran H compiler. One of the early versions, somebody did that. Went, huh? It became a return. Oops, need a print statement or an extra something for the compiler to know it was out of scope. So you link debug. By the way, I didn't hit it in here. I should really fix the slide. Probably you want the artifact of listings and maps. Screen tunnel vision. The screen, even big screens, are not big enough. The hard copy listings, when you're trying to understand what's going on, are much faster than paging through source on screen. You can't even if you write to the rule of 1 page per routine, you're still 12 routines deep, and table space is easier with real pages. Your time is worth a lot of money. Paper is 5 cents a sheet or less. Believe me, paper budget is nothing. Throw it in the recycle bin, print double-sided if you must, or print two pages and then double-side it, whatever. It's cheaper than personnel time. Okay, debug init for starts. It's processed every time debug starts. If you want to keep clutter down, define it as user mode logical. It'll wipe out when the image exits. If you're going to be doing it again and again, make it a supervisor mode logical. Fine. The idea is not to keep typing. I don't know about you, but I type fast, but my fingers aren't always as coordinated as I'd like them to be. And the keyboards seem to be made for people of smaller stature than me. And various other things. The length is not limited. You can execute a 50,000 line debug init file. Who cares? It's faster than you'll ever be. You will not type as fast as a 50,000 line file. I'm not kidding. You'll take shortcuts, you'll miss something, and you'll wonder why it got wild. Okay. Use session log routinely in debug init. Consider using a command file to start things. Why? Well, debug init, by definition, will start a command file up with a constant file name. You can't use DCL lexicals. from within debug, as nice as it would be. So you're going to overwrite your previous debugging session log. Use a command script to assign debug init. You will have to redirect some things carefully. Make the session be the name of the program you're debugging or the incident you're working on, the time and date. Now you have a unique session log for every problem. When you screw up and you need to go back to earlier in the day, I saw this in such and such, you now have something to look at. If you don't want to clutter your directory, okay, once you're starting a command file, you can create a subdirectory for the incident and have a nice little thing you can zip archive later or throw away. But it's easier with mass storage being, hell, it was easier when you had a 10 megabyte hard disk and smarter then. Now, with terabytes, who cares? Disk space, day to day, is free. Use it. I once had an office neighbor when I was in university. Her and her late husband, her husband passed away while I was there as a freshman. They had between them 5 offices. 4 of them were packed full of output. When he passed away, she was regrettably informed that she'd have to vacate 4 of the offices. This was ridiculous. And I remember her cleaning out 2 of them. Oddly enough, I was the neighbor on one of the offices, and I was moved shortly thereafter to one of the other offices next to one she was cleaning out. That was full of paper in those days. We didn't have online storage in that volume. And she kept every printout she ever generated. Computational fluid dynamics. Every print run they ran, they kept. Because somewhere, something would remind somebody of something. By the way, that's how you win wars. The crypto people who decoded the Japanese fleet code were pack rats. They kept every decrypt they ever made, as did Bletchley Park in the Atlantic. And every so often, somebody said, I remember seeing that somewhere. It set off a hare and hounds game through the archive. And then you'd pull out, aha, I have the message. That's how you win a battle. You remember something somewhere that cross-references with something else, and bingo, you have the problem. And storage is cheap, separate debug scripts. Be a pack rat. Faster than hand on session, you can edit the script into a command file. Knowledge base for retrospective quality assurance. You have bug reproducers. That will fail at some point. Keep the debugging scripts and logs from each incident when you get a reproduction failure, a reproducible problem that has been, quote, solved in the past, unquote. You now have the debug trail from what you did to find it. Just go back and rerun it. You're 90% of the way to the problem. Or at least you can rule out that possible cause. Manpower is expensive. And you get the session log, every command, everything there. Typos included and error messages. Like I said, you keep enough crap cat videos on your hard drive, or whatever your favorite pleasure is, keep your session logs. Conditional break actions. Okay. First of all, you can ignore traps you don't want to see. I spent many days before I realized this, sitting there going, go, 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 go. Ah, that one I want. Stop. What's the problem? Frequently, you get conditioned to going go, 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 and you hit go one too many times and have to go back and do it again. You have the session. See, here's the thing. If you had the session log, you delete the last one, run the session log as your command script right there. Better idea. Set a conditional action that you were inspecting by eye and use it to ignore all the breaks until the one you want. Then when you're tired and sloppy and under caffeined, you don't do stupid things. Good idea. Example, I wanted to see iteration 50. Now, if you look, I check for 50. Wish I had a laser pointer. Oh, do I have a laser pointer? I don't see it. Screw this. Put up the laser pointer. Notice I use I in the exam. Habit. I could put a 50 there. But if I discover it's really iteration 47 I want, I change one thing, not 3 or 4. Minimum change. You have the variable access, use it. Stop thinking on typographical scut. Just do what you have to do and leverage everything. Now you do that, I get the breakpoint automatic. It runs automatically, okay, slower than it would otherwise. That's understood, but that's not your problem, generally. At the 50th iteration, it displays, and I could just as easily read this go out. And I'll be back to command prompt at that iteration. How much time have I saved? Minutes. As much as maybe a quarter hour. Just like that. How much attention have I saved? And fatigue? A lot. I'm not doing it by hand now. Nestable scripts. If you get the DBG greater than prompt, you can run a script any way you want. So once you know a line number and you know you want to see it, you can put it in DBG $init, the particular file you're using for DBG $init, or you can put it in a session file and call a session logical name. Remember, it's VMS, logical names are cool. You can use a logical name to point to your current session. So if you keep getting interrupted on the phone and switching from terminal session to terminal session, because you have 5 things on your desk, you can have 5 different things open, each one in a separate session or a separate job. Think, leverage, and context. I've seen a lot of people have that problem. The phone keeps ringing, and they've got Windows. They've got more Windows than Anderson Windows out there. I have 2 screens on my desk, big ones. I still run out of screen space. The financial traders have frames with 6 or more screens, and they're not small screens. They're frames literally attaching to the furniture and the ceiling. Some are ceiling mounts, because you can't put that much stuff on furniture without having the desk tip over. They have ceiling attached structural supports that hold 6, 20, or 30-pound screens. The big ones. And they have the workstations to drive and graphics processors to drive them all simultaneously. It's like AWACS for debugging. Huge. But if you do that kind of thing, you need it. I was working on one client with a multi-node cluster, and I had the console on each cluster node up, plus 1 or more terminal sessions on each cluster node up, plus a copy of monitor up on each session node. Strike. More than 1 copy of monitor running on different session nodes, all on the same. It was hard to set up. But when you've got people testing things, and lots of things happening, you need the situational awareness. Same story on debugging. Nestable scripts. You can do it at any point you get a prompt. They are nestable. This can give you a headache because you can be many levels deep when you get an error message. So consider, actually, I have to make a note of that. I don't remember. I don't think there's a write statement in the debugger.
Be like a print? Or a
Yeah.
start,
I don't remember. Is it there?
I use evaluate quote, hello quote.
Ah, okay. That's a good point. You see where I'm going. By the way, same rule about entry and exit gates when you're looking for bugs. Just at the front of the file, put an evaluate in to say entering the useful path names, please. And when you exit, same story. Because when you have this huge tree of things being imported and something goes burp in the night, you need to know where.
So the enter exit beside your use of set break, if set trace is also used in the free codes, and you can do a set trace / return and then print something. So that gives you at the exit of every routine.
You've got the power.
Say, I'm leaving this routine. So you can actually then have that in your log. I came in, I left this.
Exactly. You can have the
Give you traces in, out, in, out.
yes, you can do the power here.
And you didn't have to modify your program to do that. You didn't have to compile in all of
Right.
the prints or the prints.
Well, I put them, I have a whole thing on that.
Yeah.
I do exit entry gates as a, if I'm supervising a project, one of the things I break hands for is there shall be a variable containing a 64-bit or more variable containing trace flags. It will be a parameter on the command line when you start, and every entry gate and exit gate will check input parameters, and if the trace flags are set appropriately, will report exit and entry. That's automatic, fault handling, the whole shtick. Because if it's part of the boilerplate that you start with, you will need it. And this is what I call the electrician fallacy. If you have anybody, how many people here are homeowners or have been homeowners? You are redoing your kitchen. The kitchen designer will ask you where you're putting the coffee maker, where you're putting the bread machine, toaster oven. They'll go down the whole laundry list. It will not have the slow cooker, the ice cream maker. The answer is to think like a utilities person. Put in quad at a minimum boxes. That's 4x4 boxes. If not 6x4 boxes. Use reducing face plates on them. And if you misgauge how many outlets you need, outlets are cheap. Wire is cheap. The incremental cost of using 10 gauge wire versus 12 gauge is, pick your language, chicken shit. The cost of labor running it is boundless. If you over-provisioned, when somebody gets that new bread maker or ice cream churner or whatever, or air fryer, whatever, oh, I need an outlet here. No, you don't need an extension cord. Why? Take out a Dremel motor tool, cut back the outspace you have over the cover, replace it with a new cover. Oh, sorry. Throw the breaker off. You ran individual breakers for each outlet. That's not expensive either. Dremel out the space, unscrew the faceplate. Faceplate costs $1. Go to Home Depot or Lowe's or your favorite hardware store, buy a new faceplate and an outlet, and $10 later, you have 2 more outlets. As opposed to calling the electrician to rerun the line, upgrade the breaker, break through everything, and that cost you, that $100 air fryer just cost you $1,000, if not more. So yeah, use The same software engineering on the debugging scripts you use everywhere else. Standalone calls. We got into it a little earlier. I front ran myself. You can call every routine you want from the debugger. You're allowed to set parameters. They can be constants. They can be part of the current state. That makes debugger arbitrarily extendable. Yes, you can generate files, external files from the debugger that are available while you're still in the debugging session, should you be prepared. You can open a log file, write a whole context dump to it, close it, and send it to the printer. Or just leave it in the right directory. Or leave it in the name pointed to biological name for the incident. Notice what you can do here. Spawn, run a subprocess to whatever your heart desires. Produce an incident log. Produce a application dump while you're still sitting in the context. You can leave that context sitting there for as long as you want. Your mind should be screaming at this point. And you find something interesting and you've got a multi-person team. If you've thought ahead, you can generate this thing and email it to Tokyo. I'm not kidding. Support. Here's something. This is a hint, by the way. You can send it to the vendor in the right circumstances and say, hey, this is happening. I'm sitting in it right now. What do you want me to do with it? These are things you can do. It's tremendous leverage at resolving a problem without having to go back and reproduce or set things back up again. You can call a print routine that's semantically aware to print out a table with all the pointers resolved to what they point to, all the bit fields decoded, everything just laid out on your screen right there. It's one step beyond analyze dump. It's arbitrary analyze dump extended. And it's all user implementable. Now, you can combine all of these things to your heart's content. If you want to do the breakpoint, do a call, write a diagnostic file, come back, do a CRC on it to see if it's actually been corrupted. I had an episode, John will remember, where the stack got corrupted. I didn't think of this at the time, but this on a stack frame would have been an instant understanding of what happened. You could even do this in production as a crash awareness thing. That if it bug checks this way, run this debug script in production. And when it breaks out, instead of getting the cryptic one-line message, you get something more extensive. It's all about getting rid of the cannot reproduce problem because of insufficient context. It gets rid of keyboard drudge. All this repetitive spin up you do every time on the flywheel of debugging, it means the wheels, you never stop. The wheels keep moving. You can get very far on things if you don't have to keep spinning things up every time. If you do something twice, put it in a script. I have a rule about source code. If I'm going through a source base, I find a piece of code, a repeated incantation. People love cut and paste. No, actually, I really want a yardstick or one of the old school, wooden pointers. Do not ever reproduce an incantation. That's one more case of it being wrong. I had a programmer in an application shop who was the most productive programmer on the site. He got promoted for it, actually. Every program was the same. He copied every one and changed the name and a parameter to the main routine. The guy could produce 10,000 lines a month. A good month, 100,000 lines a month. Amazing productivity.
It's easy if you type the same thing.
That's, yeah.
You don't type. The problem came. Well, here's the problem. All their code base assumed the users had sysproof. Every single operator in the company at a telephone in the call center was running an account with sysproof. Captive, yes, but with sysproof. Well, this was a year of Sarbanes-Oxley. The auditor came in, took one look at the account file, walked into the CFO, and handed them a draft letter. The CFO puked, which was lucky because it could have been a massive stroke and heart attack, which would have left the chair vacant. At least he just lost his lunch. The letter basically said, everybody in the company has full privileges to modify anything in an unauditable and uncontrolled fashion. We will not certify any compliance on this system. Full stop. Like I said, he threw up. I came in, and one of the applications programmers and I, not this individual, he was very unhappy with me. One of the better applications programmers and I spent 2 months, mostly her work, getting rid of all the duplication and replacing it with a shareable library and 100 stubs, and fixing them all. And then doing the full qualifications on all of them. And in the end, everybody was reduced to an ACL and an identifier. And no privileges. But I had to go through the exercise. Huge expense. Here, you can do no thinking, no typing, and you can superimpose a web on top of a program, even if it's optimized, as long as you have the debug symbol table. You can just impose a test web right over it of sensors, and when it pops up like a trigger. Another point, you can actually build that mechanically. You have the listing files. You have the search command. You have a text processing system. You can set breaks automatically on flagged places in the code base. I haven't done an experiment to see how many breakpoints I can set in a program. Well, it would be worth checking to find out, because I can see some of these assemblages generating a lot of breakpoints. Just a thought, John. I'm just.
It's either 64K or 32.
I'm just observing. It might be worth an experiment, because you can get some pretty large code bases. But if you think about it that way, you have a process. You build a program, you build the breakpoint network. It doesn't matter if you ship it. Support has it. A version of you already have a semi-automated or automated process for building things. As part of that process, you build a listing file, which you always do internally. So you take another step. You process the listing file into a breakpoint collection. Something goes wrong, what do? Blast the breakpoints in. Run the code. Pop goes the weasel. It triggers. mechanical, machine work, not your work. You can prune it, but frankly, I don't recommend that. If you find a problem in your collection of breakpoints, fix the generation of the breakpoints. Don't ever edit compiled files. Fix the macro underlying it. By the way, two implementation rule, subroutines, macros. Never do it twice. You don't want to do subroutines with profligacy for simple computations. That's expensive for no benefit. But every language out there has a macro facility. Use it. It's a cleaner compiler. The compiler is a better expander than your hands. You will misname a variable, mistype a constant, and go spend hours trying to find it. It may even compile correctly. Ask NASA. They blew up a rocket for that once. Somebody put a period instead of a comma. It's easy to do. I've seen it. Get rid of let the machine do your work. The features are there. They probably need improvements on the edges when you start doing this. Debug was not quite built for this kind of thinking. It was built for a much less mechanistic age. But these are tweaks. These are tailoring nips and tucks. Prevent conflict in advance. If you do this, your time to solution goes down. Your response time to problems shortens. By the way, I have to try the experiments because I just didn't have time. But this is potentially a way to deal with production problems. You can have a debug input log for a production program. Why am I saying this? Okay, let's take a typical case. You don't compile debug. Okay, you compile, optimize. Let's take a very simple case. I've got about 2 minutes. Yeah. Take the case. You have a production program. You compile, optimize. What is your incremental cost of turning on debug at the compile and link levels? 0. You generate artifacts of listing and the symbol table files. The listing you should be generating anyway for documentation purposes. Auditors can't read binary code. You should have the listing, you should have the map for production. You're generating a symbol table for the compiled code and a link map. The link table and the symbol table. Overhead of having those, 0. What happens? You get woken up at 3 in the morning, the job blew up. That's not good. What's your reaction? Well, you have to rerun it, but if it's not a timing problem, it'll blow up again. I'm arguing your response should be enable debug on the run command. With the input files predefined to full coverage on all the asserts and such, and the output file set to an appropriate session log. And if it breaks, it does all the fault analysis and exits. This is a batch operation, no interactive thing. Assign the logical, go. Now you have a response that any watchstander can run. You don't need the additional developer to run it. Any operations person now has a cheat sheet to what to do before calling the author. I need the doctor, your physician will tell you something similar in their response. I can't, over the phone, can't do anything, go to the ER. The first thing the ER does, EKG, blood work, they run the protocol. This is the same thing. You've written down the checklist. We have a problem, Houston. Run the debug, send me the output. Take one look at the output. Who's the responsible party? You can even put that in the session log. Contact maintainer responsible for. Bang. It's going to make things less of a party. You don't care if this happens. If this happens every third or fifth or seventh night, and I've had those, the order book goes, debug trace on production run permanently enabled. If it fails, call me. Well, you have to call me anyway. Call duty officer. But now it's not working blind. Now it happened. You have the output. You now know what you're looking for. But at least you're in a night, you're not at the ground level, you're up at the base camp to attack the problem. I mean, does this hang together? This is process. Hope it's been helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you much.